The call came in at 6:14 a.m., just as Detective Ethan Cole was finishing his first bitter cup of coffee. The September rain hadn't stopped all night, leaving the city of Coldwater, Pennsylvania, drenched and restless. The dispatcher's voice carried that clipped edge Ethan had learned to recognize, a tone that meant this wasn't routine. "Detective Cole, we've got a body, male, mid-30s, pulled from the river near Ironwood Bridge. Patrols on scene." Cole dragged on his overcoat, grabbed his badge and service weapon, and left his apartment in the crumbling red brick complex he'd called home since his divorce. The air outside was cold, the kind of damp chill that got into your bones. The flashing red and blue lights were already visible when he pulled up near the bridge. Uniformed officers had cordoned off the muddy embankment. A small crowd of early joggers and insomniacs huddled under umbrellas, drawn in by the morbid pull of tragedy. The body lay sprawled half in the water, half out, as though the river had been reluctant to give him up. Dr. Marisol Vega, the county medical examiner, knelt beside the corpse. She looked up as Cole approached, her dark hair tied back and her gloves already streaked with mud. "Morning, detective," she said, her tone flat. She'd seen too many bodies to waste words on ceremony. "What are we looking at?" Cole asked, crouching. "Male, 30 to 35, lacerations on the wrists and neck, bruising on the face. Looks like blunt force trauma. Time of death, maybe 6 to 8 hours ago. I'll know more after the autopsy." Cole studied the victim's face. Swollen, pale, with a faint tattoo peeking out from the collarbone, a serpent winding into a dagger. "Gang related," he muttered. "Possibly," Vega said, "but there's something else." She pointed to the man's clenched right hand. With effort, she pried the fingers open. Inside was a torn scrap of paper, smeared but still legible. "Coldwater will drown." Cole felt the familiar surge of adrenaline tighten in his chest. It wasn't just a killing. It was a message. He stood, scanning the bridge above, the river below, the faces of the onlookers. Somewhere in this rain-soaked city, someone wanted him to know that the first body was only the beginning. And Cole had the sinking feeling that Coldwater was about to live up to its name. Detective Ethan Cole hated the paperwork that always came with a new homicide, but he hated unanswered questions even more. By mid-morning, the body from the river had been transported to the morgue, and Cole was in the precinct studying photographs spread across his desk. The victim's face, swollen from the water, stared back at him through glossy prints. The serpent and dagger tattoo on the collarbone was clearer in the close-up shots. Cole leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his jaw. Tattoos told stories, sometimes of prison time, sometimes of loyalty, sometimes of debts that could never be paid. Still looking at dead men's artwork, a voice said. Cole glanced up. Detective Lena Ramirez leaned against his doorway, a file tucked under her arm. She was younger, sharp-eyed, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who didn't care about stepping on toes. Cole respected her, though he'd never admit it out loud. "Morning, Ramirez," he said. "You know anything about this ink?" She stepped inside, placing the file on his desk. "Serpent and Dagger, seen it before. East Side Kings, small-time crew, but lately they've been moving heavier product. Fentanyl mostly." Cole frowned, thought the Kings were fading. Last I heard, their leader got put away. "Yeah, but someone else stepped up. Guy named Victor Morales, ex-con, likes to keep things messy." She opened the file, revealing surveillance photos. Men in hoodies huddled near warehouses, tagged walls, bags exchanged in dim alleys. Cole studied the images, so our victim was one of theirs. Maybe he pissed them off. Either way, not the kind of people you want to cross. Before Cole could respond, his phone buzzed. It was Dr. Vega. He put her on speaker. "Detective, I've got preliminary findings." Vega said, "Your John Doe didn't drown. Cause of death was blood loss from deep cuts to the wrists. The neck wounds were post-mortem." Cole exchanged a look with Ramirez. "So someone staged the scene." "Exactly, and here's the kicker. The victim had defensive wounds. He fought back hard." Cole leaned forward. Anything else? Vega hesitated. Yes. His fingertips were scorched, deliberately burned, no usable prints. When the line went dead, the office felt colder. Cole tapped the photograph of the tattoo, burning off prints. Ramirez said quietly, "That's cartel style." Cole nodded. Somebody wanted this man erased, except for that message in his hand. Ramirez glanced at the note again. "Coldwater will drown." "What do you think it means?" she asked. Cole stood, shrugging into his coat. "I don't know, but if it's a warning, it wasn't meant for the victim." He grabbed his badge. It was meant for us. By late afternoon, the sky had cleared, but Coldwater still felt damp and gray. Detective Ethan Cole and Detective Lena Ramirez drove across town to a run-down neighborhood on the city's east side. The victim had finally been identified. Marcus Hale, age 34, a mechanic with a record for possession and assault. Not a saint, but not a ghost either. The address they had for next of kin led them to a peeling tooth. Tory duplex with sagging porch steps. A young boy's bicycle leaned against the railing, its front wheel bent out of shape. Cole knocked on the door, his knuckles echoing against the hollow wood. A moment later, it opened a crack and a woman appeared, mid-30s, tired eyes, hair pulled into a messy bun. She clutched the frame as if it were holding her up. "Mrs. Hale?" Cole asked gently. Her lips tightened. "It's a mess, Hale. Who are you?" "Detective Cole, this is Detective Ramirez, Coldwater Police Department. May we come in?" For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then she opened the door wider. The living room smelled faintly of detergent and cigarette smoke. Toys were scattered on the floor, and a muted TV played a cartoon in the background. A little boy, no more than 6, sat cross-legged on the carpet. "Daniel, go to your room," she said softly. The boy looked up, curious, then shuffled down the hall without a word. "MS?" Hale sank onto the couch, her shoulders trembling. "This is about Marcus, isn't it?" Cole sat across from her. "He'd been through this too many times, but it never got easier. I'm afraid it is. We found your husband, ex-husband." She cut in, her voice brittle. "We split a year ago." Cole nodded. "I'm sorry for your loss. Do you know if Marcus had enemies? Anyone who might have wanted to hurt him?" She let out a harsh laugh, one without humor. "Enemies, Marcus made them everywhere he went. Gambling debts, drinking buddies, the Kings. Take your pick." Ramirez leaned forward. "The Kings? You mean the East Side Kings? A mess." Hale's eyes flickered with something like fear. "He used to run with them years back. Said he was done with that life, but once you're in, you're never really out." Cole studied her carefully. "Did he mention anyone specific? A name, maybe?" She shook her head, tears brimming. "No, just that he was scared. He came by last week to see Daniel, and he kept checking the windows, jumping at every noise. I asked what was wrong, but he wouldn't say. Only thing he told me was..." She trailed off, covering her mouth with her hand. "What?" Cole pressed gently. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He said something bad was coming, not just for him, for the whole city." Ramirez glanced at Cole. "Coldwater will drown." Before they could ask more, a loud crash sounded from the back of the house. Glass shattering, wood splintering. MS Hale screamed. Cole drew his weapon instantly, motioning for Ramirez to flank left. He moved toward the kitchen, heart pounding. Another crash, then the slam of a back door. By the time they burst through, the intruder was gone. Nothing but the lingering stench of cigarette smoke and a shattered kitchen window. Cole scanned the yard, catching only the faintest glimpse of a dark hoodie disappearing over the fence. Too far to chase. When he returned inside, Ramirez was holding a small object in a plastic glove. It had been left on the kitchen counter, deliberately placed, a playing card face up, the King of Spades. The King of Spades sat between Cole and Ramirez on the dash of the unmarked car as they pulled away from the Hale residence. The card was creased, the edges yellowed, but its placement had been deliberate. A signature, a calling card. Cole drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. Someone's playing games. Ramirez turned the card over in her gloved hands, nothing written on the back, no fingerprints either. The CSI team confirmed it had been wiped clean. East Side Kings, Ramirez said. The name, the card, it's 2 on the nose. Cole shook his head. 2 on the nose means it's intentional. Either they want us to think it's the Kings, or they want us to know they're proud of it. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the city sliding by boarded-up storefronts, flickering neon signs, the skeletal remains of Coldwater's old steel industry. Finally, Ramirez broke the silence. You ever get the feeling this city eats people alive? Cole gave her a sidelong glance. Every day, back at the precinct, Captain Roy Harker was waiting. His office smelled of stale coffee and the cigars he wasn't supposed to smoke indoors. A grizzled veteran with thinning hair and a voice like gravel, Harker had seen the city's worst and carried it in his gut. He jabbed a finger at the photographs on his desk. The body, the tattoo, the playing card. You two stirring up trouble already. Cole leaned against the doorframe. We didn't stir it. It found us. Harker snorted. Don't get cute. The mayor's already breathing down my neck about crime rates. Last thing I need is some gang war lighting up the city. Ramirez crossed her arms. With respect, Captain, we've got a dead man, a cryptic message, and now someone breaking into the victim's ex-wife's house. This isn't just random violence. Harker sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Fine, dig into it, but keep it quiet. The press doesn't hear a word until we've got something concrete. Understood. Cole nodded, though he knew keeping this quiet would be like trying to hold back a storm. That night, Cole sat alone in his apartment, nursing a glass of cheap whiskey. The case files were spread across his table, lit only by the glow of a desk lamp. The words on the scrap of paper gnawed at him. Coldwater will drown. He flipped the playing card between his fingers, watching the lamplight flash against the black spade. The king. There was a knock at his door. Cole stiffened. He wasn't expecting anyone. Hand hovering near his holster. He opened it a crack. A teenager stood in the hall, hoodie pulled low, eyes darting nervously. He couldn't have been more than 16. You Cole? The boy asked. Cole's instinct screamed at him to slam the door, but he held it open. Who's asking? The kid glanced over his shoulder, then pulled something from his pocket. A folded envelope. He thrust it at Cole. They said to give you this, said you'd know what it means. Before Cole could respond, the boy bolted down the hallway and vanished into the stairwell. Cole shut the door, unfolding the envelope with care. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph. It showed Marcus Hale, alive, beaten, bloody, but very much breathing. The timestamp in the corner read 2 nights before his body was found in the river. On the back of the photo, scrawled in jagged handwriting, were 3 words, "The King Rises." Cole felt the whiskey burn in his throat. The body in the river hadn't just been a killing, it had been a message. And whoever was sending it wasn't finished. Cole stared at the Polaroid long after the kid's footsteps had faded from the stairwell. The photo felt heavier than it should, its glossy surface slick against his fingers. Marcus Hale had been alive, battered but alive, just 48 hours before his corpse washed up under Ironwood Bridge, which meant someone had held him, tortured him, filmed his suffering like a trophy. Cole slid the photo into an evidence bag and called Ramirez. She answered on the second ring, her voice rough with exhaustion. "Yeah, got company." Cole said, "Some kid just dropped off a gift. You'll want to see this." By the time Ramirez arrived, Cole had brewed a fresh pot of coffee. She scanned the Polaroid, her jaw tightening. "Jesus, they wanted you to have this. Wanted us to have it." Cole corrected. Ramirez tapped the words on the back. "The King Rises. If this is Morales, he's making it personal, trying to show us he's in control." Cole shook his head. Morales is violent, but he's not theatrical. He doesn't leave notes in corpses' hands. He doesn't send Polaroids. Someone else is behind this. Ramirez paced the room, restless. Then who? That question hung heavy in the air. The next morning, they tracked down the kid who delivered the envelope. Patrol picked him up near an abandoned lot where he was tagging walls with cheap spray paint. At the station, he looked smaller, swallowed by the interrogation room's harsh fluorescent lights. Name, Darius Bell, age 16. Minor arrests for vandalism and shoplifting. No known gang ties. Cole sat across from him, arms folded. "Darius, You want to tell me where you got the envelope?" The boy chewed his lip. I can't, you can't," Cole repeated, "or you won't. They'll kill me," Darius whispered. His knee bounced under the table. "You don't understand." Ramirez leaned forward, softening her tone. "Help us, Darius. Whoever gave you that envelope. They already killed Marcus Hale. You think they'll spare you if you stay quiet?" The boy's eyes flicked between them. Finally, he exhaled shakily. "I didn't see his face. He had a mask, black hoodie, told me if I didn't deliver it, they'd put me in the river too." Cole's voice was calm, measured. What else? His voice, his build, anything. Darius hesitated. He called himself the king, said the city was his now, said Coldwater was gonna learn who runs it. Cole and Ramirez exchanged a look. A pretender, using the name of the East Side Kings, or something worse. Before Cole could press further, the door swung open. Captain Harker stepped in, stone-faced. "That's enough. Cut him loose." Cole stood. "What? He's our only lead." Harker's jaw tightened. "He's a kid. No charges. No reason to hold him. Let him go." Ramirez frowned. "With all due respect, Captain, this isn't," I said, "let him go." Harker snapped, his voice hard as steel. Cole watched as Darius was escorted out, trembling but free. Something in Harker's tone didn't sit right with him. When the room was empty again, Cole turned to Ramirez. "Since when does Harker care about cutting kids loose?" Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "Since somebody leaned on him." Cole nodded grimly. He thought back to the photo, the burned fingertips, the card, the note. The pieces didn't fit neatly together. Someone was orchestrating chaos, and the department itself might be tangled in it. That night, as Cole locked up his files, a single envelope slid under his office door. No knock, no footsteps, just silence. Inside was another Polaroid. This one showed a warehouse on the east side, its rusted sign half visible in the shot. And standing in front of it, hood pulled low, was a man holding the Queen of Hearts card between two fingers. On the bottom edge of the photo, written in the same jagged scrawl as before, were 3 words, "Your move, detective." The photograph burned in Cole's mind long after he tucked it into an evidence sleeve. The warehouse was familiar. He'd driven past it dozens of times on patrol in his early years. It sat abandoned on the east side, a rusted husk of the old textile district. Broken windows, corrugated steel walls graffitied over with crowns and serpents. The perfect place to hide in plain sight. By midnight, Cole and Ramirez were parked a block away, their unmarked car blending into the shadows. The rain had returned, pattering against the windshield like a steady drumbeat. "You know this is bait," Ramirez said, adjusting her Kevlar vest. Cole checked his Glock, chambering around. "Yeah. Question is, what kind of trap are we walking into?" They slipped out of the car, moving low along the chain link fence. The warehouse loomed ahead, its rusted doors chained but not locked. Too easy. Cole cut the chain with bolt cutters, the metallic snap echoing in the night. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and rot. Shafts of moonlight cut through the holes in the roof, illuminating stacks of old pallets and machinery draped in cobwebs. Every creak of the floor echoed like a gunshot. "Clear left," Ramirez whispered, sweeping her flashlight. Cole moved right, weapon raised. His beam landed on something propped against a support pillar. A mannequin, dressed in a hoodie, its plastic hand holding another playing card, the Queen of Hearts. Cole swore under his breath. "They're toying with us." Before Ramirez could answer, a metallic clang echoed through the warehouse. Then another. Footsteps, deliberate, circling. "Show yourself." Cole barked, his voice ricocheting off steel walls. A voice answered, distorted, amplified, coming from hidden speakers. Low, theatrical, almost amused. "Detective Cole. Detective Ramirez. Welcome to my kingdom." The sound bounced, impossible to trace. Cole's grip tightened on his gun. "You like my gifts." Marcus Hale enjoyed them too, right before he bled out. Ramirez's jaw clenched. "Coward, come out and face us." Laughter crackled through the speakers. "In time, first, a lesson. Coldwater belongs to the king, and when the king rises, the city drowns." A loud bang erupted behind them. An explosion of sparks from an old fuse box. The warehouse plunged into near darkness, lit only by the trembling beam of their flashlights. Cole, Ramirez started, but then the scent hit them. Gasoline, strong, suffocating. Cole's stomach dropped. We need to move now. As they sprinted toward the exit, fire ignited along the far wall, an orange blossom that roared to life, racing across the soaked floor where the gas had been poured. Flames licked upward, devouring wooden pallets and coughing black smoke. The distorted voice boomed one last time through the speakers. Run, little detectives, the game's just begun. Cole and Ramirez crashed through the warehouse doors just as fire engulfed the building behind them. Sirens wailed in the distance. Neighbors must have called it in. They stood in the rain, chests heaving, the warehouse reduced to an inferno. Ramirez spat into the gutter. He knew we'd come. He planned the whole damn show. Cole stared into the flames, his jaw set. No, he wanted us alive. He wanted us to carry his message. Behind them, the warehouse collapsed in a shower of sparks, lighting the night sky, and Cole knew one thing for certain. Coldwater wasn't just facing a killer. It was facing someone who wanted to be a legend. By dawn, the warehouse was nothing more than a blackened skeleton. Fire crews had battled the blaze for hours, but little remained besides twisted beams and heaps of smoldering ash. The air still reeked of gasoline, acrid and heavy. Cole stood with Ramirez behind the police tape, sipping bitter coffee from a paper cup. His clothes still carried the stink of smoke. Arson team's gonna find accelerant everywhere, Ramirez muttered. Whole thing was rigged to blow. Cole nodded, eyes fixed on the ruins. He wanted us inside. He wanted us to feel the fire. A uniform approached, handing over a scorched evidence bag. Inside, miraculously preserved amid the flames, was another playing card, the ace of clubs. Found it in the rubble, the officer said. Cole studied the card. Unlike the others, this one had writing scrawled across the front in bold black ink. Next hand, City Hall. Ramirez swore under her breath. He's escalating, going public. Cole felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. City Hall wasn't just a symbol. It was the beating heart of Coldwater's government. If the king planned something there, it wouldn't be subtle. Later that morning, Captain Harker's office was a storm. He slammed the ace of clubs down on his desk. Jesus Christ, Cole. City Hall. The mayor's already panicking. Council members are calling me every damn minute, and you bring me this. Cole stood his ground. We didn't bring it, Captain. He sent it. He wants the city to watch. Ramirez added, this isn't just about killing anymore. It's about control, theater. He's building a myth. Harker jabbed a finger at them. You shut this down quietly, I don't care how, but if one camera crew catches wind of this circus, you'll both be walking a beat in traffic control. Cole didn't respond. His mind was already racing, replaying the king's words in the warehouse. Coldwater belongs to the king. That afternoon, Cole and Ramirez met with Dr. Vega in the morgue. The autopsy report on Marcus Hale was finally complete. Vega laid out photos of the wounds with clinical precision. Cause of death was exsanguination, yes, but look closer at the cuts. They're symmetrical, precise. This wasn't a brawl, it was ritual. Cole frowned. Ritual? Vega nodded. Whoever did this took their time. The cuts are patterned, almost ceremonial, and the burn marks on his fingertips. They weren't just to erase prints. They were inflicted before death. Ramirez's stomach turned. So he was tortured, deliberately. Not just tortured. Vega corrected, marked. Someone was sending a message through his body. Cole leaned against the counter, piecing it together, the playing cards. The notes, the fire, ritual, theater, the king wasn't just a killer, he was performing. That night, Cole returned to his apartment, bone, tired but unable to sleep. He poured himself another glass of whiskey, set the ace of clubs on the table, and stared at it until the numbers blurred. On impulse, he opened his laptop and pulled up old case files, Coldwater homicides from the last decade. He scanned the reports, looking for patterns, unsolved murders, bodies staged, odd details dismissed at the time. There it was, 3 years ago, a vagrant found under the pier, throat slit, clutching a playing card. The 10 of diamonds, labeled gang violence, never solved, 5 years ago, a prostitute strangled in a motel, a note scrawled on the mirror, the game begins, Cole's pulse quickened. This wasn't new. The king hadn't risen overnight. He'd been in Coldwater all along. City Hall loomed over Coldwater's downtown square like a stone sentinel. Built a century ago when the steel industry was booming, its marble steps and clock tower had once symbolized prosperity. Now, with the city crumbling, the building felt more like a fortress under siege. By the time Cole and Ramirez arrived, uniformed officers were already swarming the perimeter. Sniffing dogs paced the steps, handlers taut on their leashes. The mayor's security detail balked orders, trying to keep anxious city employees back from the entrance. Looks like the king already got his message across. Ramirez muttered as she clipped her badge to her belt. Captain Harker was waiting at the barricade, jaw clenched, tie loosened. Cole, Ramirez, the mayor wants this place cleared by noon. Council meeting can't be postponed. Find me a bomb, a shooter, a damn deck of cards, whatever this lunatic's planning. Before that, Cole scanned the crowd. Reporters were already gathering at the edges, cameras pointed like vultures circling. If the king wanted a stage, he'd pick the perfect one. Inside, the building hummed with nervous energy. Officers checked offices, stairwells, maintenance closets. Cole and Ramirez split up, Cole heading upstairs while Ramirez swept the basement with a tactical unit. On the second floor, Cole passed rows of closed doors until one caught his eye. Room 207, a storage closet. The door was ajar. He pushed it open, gun raised. The room was empty except for a small wooden box placed carefully in the center of the floor. No dust on it, no sign it had been there long. Cole crouched, studying it. Plain pine hinged lid, no lock, a single playing card taped to the top, the jack of diamonds. Ramirez. Cole muttered into his radio, "I've got something. Basement's clear. What is it? A gift." He lifted the lid. Inside was an old-fashioned cassette recorder already running. A distorted voice spilled from the tiny speaker. "Bravo, detective. You've found my jack, but every hand needs a queen. Checkmate comes soon." Then the tape clicked off. Cole's gut clenched. He stood scanning the hallway. The message wasn't meant to threaten City Hall. It was meant to lure them here. Ramirez's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Cole, you need to get down here, now." In the basement, Ramirez stood beside a row of old filing cabinets. One had been dragged open, its drawers gutted. Inside, taped to the metal, was another Polaroid. This one showed Captain Harker. He was seated in a chair, head bowed, a deck of cards scattered at his feet. His face was bruised, his wrists bound. The timestamp read 2 hours ago. Cole's blood ran cold. "Harker's been with us all morning." Ramirez whispered, "Hasn't he?" Cole didn't answer. His mind raced. Either the king had staged the photo, or the man calling the shots at City Hall wasn't their captain at all. And if that was true, Coldwater's corruption ran deeper than they'd imagined. Cole couldn't tear his eyes from the Polaroid. Captain Harker bound to a chair, cards scattered like breadcrumbs. The timestamp mocked him. 2 hours ago. Ramirez broke the silence first. "We were standing right next to him, Cole. If that photo's real, then who the hell was in City Hall with us?" Cole's stomach churned. He thought back to the captain's office, the smell of cigars, the barked orders, the uncharacteristic decision to cut Darius loose. Little things that hadn't felt right. Maybe it wasn't Harker, Cole muttered. Maybe it was someone wearing his badge. Ramirez frowned. A double? That's insane. Cole slipped the Polaroid into an evidence bag. Insane doesn't mean impossible. The king wants us questioning everyone, including our own. Back upstairs, the mayor's press conference was about to begin. Reporters crowded the rotunda, their microphones extended like weapons. Captain Harker, or whoever he was, stood at the podium, flanked by officers. Cole felt his pulse quicken. The man looked like Harker, sounded like Harker, but the Polaroid burned in his pocket. Ramirez whispered, "If that's a fake, he's good. Damn good." Cole's eyes locked on the captain's hands as he gripped the podium. The knuckles were clean, but Cole remembered real Harker had a scar across his right hand from a bar fight years back. A jagged white line that never healed smooth. This man's hand was flawless. Cole's got twisted. It's not him. He leaned toward Ramirez. Get the mayor out, now. But before she could move, the imposter raised a card from his pocket and held it high for the cameras. The Joker, gasps rippled through the room, then the fire alarms shrieked. Panic erupted. Reporters scattered. City officials shoved past one another toward the exits. Smoke began to curl from the vents above, thick and acrid. Cole shoved through the chaos, weapon drawn, but the false Harker vanished into the stampede, swallowed by the crowd. Ramirez grabbed his arm. Cole, we need to move. They pushed their way through the haze, guiding terrified civilians toward the stairwell. Sirens wailed outside as fire crews arrived, but the building was already descending into chaos. By the time Cole and Ramirez reached the street, the imposter was gone. City Hall belched black smoke against the night sky, another scar for Coldwater to carry. Cole's chest heaved. He felt the Polaroid burning through his coat pocket. Somewhere, the real Harker was out there alive or dead. He didn't know. Ramirez touched his shoulder. Cole, he's inside our house. Whoever this king is, he's closer than we thought. Cole nodded grimly, scanning the panicked crowd. Somewhere among them, the king was watching, smiling, waiting for his next move, and Cole knew the game wasn't just about Coldwater anymore. It was about him. Coldwater Police Headquarters buzzed like a hornet's nest. Phones rang off the hook. Reporters hammered the front desk for statements, and half the department looked ready to collapse. The fire at City Hall hadn't caused casualties, thank God, but the king's theatrics had humiliated them in front of the entire city. Cole and Ramirez sat in the briefing room, both running on fumes. A projector displayed the Polaroid of Harker on the wall, his battered face magnified for all to see. Lieutenant Avery, acting as temporary commander, spoke over the murmur of exhausted detectives. We've got officers searching every warehouse, basement, and back alley in Coldwater. Nothing yet. If the captain's alive, he's running out of time. Ramirez muttered under her breath, if he's alive. Cole shot her a look. Don't bury him yet. That photo was staged for a reason. The king wants us chasing him. Avery frowned. Then where do we chase? Cole leaned forward, pointing at the photo. The deck of cards, it's not random. 10 of diamonds, king of spades, queen of hearts, ace of clubs, now the joker. He's building a sequence, a hand. Poker, Ramirez asked. Cole nodded. And in poker, the hand tells the story. He's leaving us a trail, but it's not just about the cards, it's about control. The room fell silent. For a moment, only the hum of the projector filled the air. Finally, Avery sighed. Work the angles, Cole, but don't go rogue. This department can't afford more chaos. Later that night, Cole and Ramirez sat in their car across from the Lucky Crown, an underground gambling club known for backroom poker games and mob money laundering. The king's obsession with cards had led them here to a neon-lit dive pulsing with bass and cigarette smoke. You think he's inside? Ramirez asked, pulling her jacket tighter. Cole shrugged. If the king wants to send a message, no better stage than a table stacked with chips. They pushed through the doors. The air was thick with smoke and desperation. Dealers barked, chips clinked, laughter rose and fell like waves. Eyes tracked the detectives as they moved across the room, some hostile, some wary. At the far end, a private table was cordoned off with velvet rope. A game was in progress, 5 players seated under a hanging lamp. Shadows concealed their faces, but one figure sat perfectly still, hands folded over his cards. Cole felt it instantly. A presence. The dealer flipped the river card. Another joker. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The still figure raised his head just enough for the light to catch his mouth. A faint smile curved his lips. Then, with deliberate precision, he slid a single card across the felt toward Cole and Ramirez. The king of hearts. Cole's hand twitched toward his weapon, but before he could draw, the figure stood and walked away. The velvet rope fell, chaos erupted, and by the time they reached the table, the chair was empty. The king had been right there inches away, and he'd slipped through their fingers again. The Lucky Crown closed down after the king's appearance, but the city didn't calm. By morning, the news was everywhere. Photos of a joker card on a poker table, rumors that the police had lost control of their own captain, and whispers that Coldwater's underworld had a new ruler. Cole sat in his car outside the precinct, the night's smoke and neon still clinging to him. He hadn't slept. He kept replaying the king's smile in his head, taunting him, daring him. Ramirez slid into the passenger seat with 2 coffees. She looked just as wrecked. Forensics came back on the Polaroid, she said, handing him a cup. The timestamp was faked. Could have been taken any time in the last week. Cole cursed under his breath, so the captain might have been gone longer than we thought. Ramirez nodded, which means the guy we've been answering to these past few days wasn't him. Cole finished. The air in the car grew heavier. If the king had infiltrated their command structure, no one in the department could be trusted. Later that day, Cole got a call from a blocked number. The voice on the other end was scrambled, synthetic, but it chilled him anyway. "Detective Cole, you're running out of time. If you want your captain back, meet me tonight, alone. Glass factory, midnight, bring the queen." Then the line went dead. Cole stared at the phone, bring the queen. Ramirez frowned. "You think he means me?" Cole hesitated. The king's obsession with cards had always been deliberate. Every role chosen. If Ramirez was the queen, then Cole knew who he was supposed to be. The ace, the abandoned glass factory, sat on the outskirts of Coldwater, its shattered windows gleaming like jagged teeth under the moonlight. Midnight air pressed cold against Cole's skin as he and Ramirez stepped inside. The place was cavernous, echoing with each footstep. Machinery long dead loomed like skeletons, and somewhere deeper in the shadows, faint music played. A single spotlight snapped on. In the beam, Captain Hawker sat tied to a chair, gagged, bruised but alive. His eyes widened when he saw them. Cole's gun was already up. "King, show yourself." Clapping echoed from the rafters. A figure emerged, dressed in a tailored black suit, gloves on his hands, a porcelain half, mask covering his face. In one hand he held a deck of cards, which he shuffled lazily as he descended the catwalk. "Welcome, ace and queen. You've played my game beautifully." Cole tightened his grip on the gun. "Let him go." The king chuckled. "Oh, I will. But first, the final hand must be dealt." He flicked a card toward them. It landed at Cole's feet, the king of spades. "Do you know why I chose this city?" The masked man asked. His voice was smooth, practiced, almost hypnotic. "Because Coldwater is a house of cards. Crooked officials, corrupt cops, desperate gamblers. One push, and the whole thing collapses. I just gave it a shove." Ramirez took a step forward. "And you think that makes you a king?" The man tilted his head. "No, it makes me inevitable." Cole's pulse hammered. The game had led to this moment, the showdown, but every instinct screamed that the king wasn't just playing for Coldwater. He was playing for Cole. The king raised his hand and snapped his fingers. More spotlights flared, illuminating figures stepping out from the shadow. Armed men in masks, surrounding them. Cole swallowed hard. This wasn't a rescue. It was a trap. The glass factory hummed with menace. Armed men fanned out, their weapons trained on Cole and Ramirez. The king stood on the catwalk above. Cards fanned in his hand like a magician waiting for applause. "Drop your gun, detective," he said lightly. "The game is over. You played well, but every deck is stacked." Cole's finger hovered over the trigger. He glanced at Ramirez. Her jaw was set, eyes sharp, but there were too many rifles aimed at them. Slowly, Cole lowered his weapon. It clattered across the concrete. The king smiled beneath his mask, wise. Hawker groaned against his gag, thrashing in the chair. Cole's gut clenched. They had come this far. He couldn't let it end with surrender. Ramirez whispered just loud enough for Cole to hear. "He wants us alive. That means we've still got a card to play." The king descended the steps, his entourage closing in behind him. He circled them like a predator, his gloved fingers tapping the cards. "Do you know why I chose you, Cole?" His tone was conversational, almost intimate. "Because you're the only man in this rotten city still pretending there's a difference between law and crime. You chase shadows while the real power laughs." Cole kept his voice steady. And you think terror makes you different? You're just another parasite feeding off Coldwater. The king chuckled. Oh no, detective, I'm the cure. He flicked a card into the air. The ace of spades. It landed at Cole's feet. That's you, Cole, the ace, strongest card in the deck, unless the king decides otherwise. Ramirez moved then, fast, precise. She grabbed the nearest thug's wrist, twisting his gun free and firing before anyone could blink. The shot echoed through the factory, dropping another masked man. Chaos exploded. Cole dove for his weapon, rolled, and fired into the circle of gunmen. Bullets tore through the dark, glass shattered above. Ramirez covered him, her aim deadly. The king's soldiers faltered, disorganized without command. Cole charged toward Hawker, cutting him free with a shard of glass. The captain coughed, ripping the gag from his mouth. About damn time, but the king was already moving, slipping through the chaos, heading for the far exit. Cole didn't hesitate. He sprinted after him, boots pounding the metal catwalk, heart slamming against his ribs. The chase cut through the maze of rusted machinery. The king moved like a shadow, always just out of reach. At last, he burst onto the factory's rooftop. The city lights of Coldwater sprawled below like a sea of dying stars. Cole emerged seconds later, gun raised. It's over, drop the mask. The king turned slowly, the porcelain glinting in the moonlight. For the first time, his composure cracked. Just slightly, a flicker of amusement mixed with something darker. You think arresting me will change this city? He asked. You put me in a cell, another king will rise. Coldwater breeds us. Cole steadied his aim. Maybe, but it won't be you. The king spread his arms wide as if offering himself to fate. Then, with one swift motion, he hurled the deck of cards into the air. They scattered like snow, whipping across the rooftop. In the storm of paper, he lunged. The two men collided, fists and fury. Cole slammed him against the rail, mask cracking against the steel. The king swung wild, but Cole drove a punch into his ribs, then tore the mask away. The face beneath was ordinary, too ordinary, not a mob boss, not a politician. Just a man in his 40s with sharp eyes and a scar across his cheek. Cole's breath caught. You're no one. The king grinned, blood on his teeth. Exactly, that's the point. Anyone can wear the crown. That's why you'll never win. He shoved hard, trying to send Cole over the edge, but Cole braced, countered, and with a final heave slammed him flat against the rooftop. Ramirez burst through the door, gun drawn. She froze, seeing Cole standing over the beaten king, mask at his feet. Cole's chest heaved. It's done. Hours later, dawn broke over Coldwater. The king was in custody, his mask sealed in an evidence bag. Harker sat in the precinct, bruised but alive, barking orders like nothing had changed. But Cole knew different. As he stood outside, watching the sun struggle through the smog, he pulled a crumpled card from his pocket, one of the ones that had scattered on the roof, the Joker. His hand tightened around it. Even with the king behind bars, the game wasn't finished. Coldwater was still a house of cards, and sooner or later, someone else would start to shuffle. Ramirez stepped up beside him. You look like a man who just lost instead of won. Cole slipped the Joker back into his coat. Because I know the deck's still stacked. They stood in silence, the city waking up around them. Coldwater had survived the night, but the shadows were still there, and Cole knew his fight was far from over. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.